Hey guys, Jessica with Southern Sparrow. Let's talk today about two-player Mahjong. It's also called Siamese Mahjong or playing Siamese. So I know traditionally Mahjong is a four-player game, but to play two-player Mahjong, you'll be playing two racks for each player. So I've set up our racks here. I have both racks on this side for me and two racks on the opposite side of the table for my opponent. We've dumped the tiles here in the middle. They're all face down. And that's the entire setup for the game. It's so simple. You don't have to build walls. You don't Charleston. You don't do a courtesy pass. You sit down, you shuffle your tiles and turn them face down. You self-draw your tiles and then you're ready to play. That's why I think playing two-player Mahjong is a great way to introduce spouses and partners to playing this awesome game that we love so much. I have found when teaching husbands how to play Mahjong that they get really frustrated with the length of time that it takes to get into the actual game. So that building of the walls, the formal dealing process that we normally do, and then the Charleston tends to be the hang up that husbands have with coming to play Mahjong. So learning to play Siamese two-player Mahjong gives you that added benefit of skipping all of that extra stuff for now and getting your husband right into the game. So how do you play? You're going to start with your two racks, and I have already self-drawn my tiles, but pretend that they're empty. You're going to start with your two racks lined up on each side. You're going to turn all of your tiles face down in the middle. You'll obviously shuffle those and mix them up until you feel that they're really nice and shuffled. And then each player self-draws. So I have self-drawn 28 tiles because I will act as the dealer in this game, meaning I'll start the gameplay with that first discard. My opponent will draw 27 tiles, and you guys can draw at the same time. You don't have to wait for each other, and you can draw from anywhere in the face-down tiles here. That goes for gameplay too. When it's your turn, you don't have to go in order like we do with the walls when we're playing four-player Mahjong. In two-player Mahjong, you just draw a tile from wherever you want and add it to your rack. So the gameplay itself is very similar to what we're used to with four-player Mahjong. The only real difference is you don't have the walls, so you're going to self-draw from this pile. I like to then, once everyone has dealt themselves their tiles, move the pile over so I have a spot for discards, and you'll start that game with that first discard. And then the nice thing about Siamese, it can feel a little overwhelming, like, oh my goodness, I'm playing two hands at once. That's maybe too much for me. But the nice thing about Siamese is you can move those tiles back and forth between your two racks as much or as little as you want. So you have a lot of flexibility in there to be able to exchange jokers back and forth, to move tiles around, to pivot. I find when I'm playing two-player Mahjong that I often will have almost a whole hand ready to go shortly after the deal, or I'll have a very, very clear line that I'm gonna go for one of my racks. And then that second rack is a bit more vague, a bit more like what you'll find in a deal in a four-player game, where you have some tiles that are maybe indicative of a section you should choose on your card, but not a very clear line that is popping out to you. So I like to get one rack kind of set for a line, and then I start to work towards that section and that line for the second rack. And again, as you draw more tiles, and maybe you have some jokers in one hand that then you draw the tile for, you can move that joker to the next rack back and vice versa throughout the game. Now, to win in two-player Mahjong or Siamese Mahjong, to win you must mahj both hands. So when you have a complete hand, you don't have to go up on your rack and show it. You can, and there are two reasons why you might choose to do that. The number one reason, let's say that we have, oh gosh, do I even have any pairs here? Well, it doesn't matter. Let's say that we are exposed. This is not something that's on the card, but let's say we're exposed with a joker here. And I am very close on this line that I'm playing on this rack here. And I could mahj with it and protect my jokers. If I mahj this line, that exposed joker is locked. My opponent cannot then draw that tile and exchange it for my exposed joker if I've mahjed the full line. So if I am up on my rack and I have mahjed that line it's locked in and no one can exchange for the jokers anymore. So that could be a strategic reason why you might want to mahj one hand in a game of two-player mahjong before you've officially mahjed by winning both hands. Okay, the second reason why you might want to mahj a single hand in a game of two-player mahjong. If, as we know, you cannot call for a single or a pair unless it is your final tile to mahj. So if you're playing two-player mahjong and you need something that has been discarded for a single or a pair, and it's your last tile for that line's mahjong, you can call to mahj that single line and then continue to play until you've completed the second line, and then you officially mahjong or win. So those are the two reasons why you might want to fully expose and mahj a single line, even though you aren't technically mahjing until you've won both lines on your double racks here. Okay, what else is there to know about Siamese? Again, you're gonna self-draw those tiles. You're going to immediately start the gameplay. You can choose to do a courtesy pass, but it's not technically part of the rules, not required. So if you choose to do a courtesy pass, that's between you and your opponent. Sometimes my husband and I play Siamese a lot. Sometimes we'll do a courtesy pass if we're kind of in the mood and both of us have, junk tiles. Most often we don't. We just self-draw and start the game. And the really nice thing about Siamese, it is a really great way to get really comfortable with a card. I know that this 2024 card has been out for a while. The 2025 cards will come in April. So that's right around the corner. And what I love about playing Siamese frequently is when those new cards are released, I'm getting two hands at a time built, and I'm also churning through games at a much quicker pace because we aren't building the walls, we aren't doing the Charleston, we aren't doing the courtesy pass, we aren't waiting for our chatty friend over here to our right who won't stop talking during the Charleston. Instead, we're just starting that game, which means that in an evening together playing two-player mahjong, you will get through more games than in the same evening if you were playing four-player mahjong. So I really love that, to get lots and lots of practice in, especially as we approach April when that new card comes out. I would encourage you between now and then, teach your best friend, teach your partner, teach your spouse how to play Siamese Mahjong, so that then in April when the new cards come out, you can get lots and lots of practice in between your bigger four-player games. The other nice thing about Siamese Mahjong, I find that husbands especially get really frustrated when they're learning this game with how long it takes to get to the actual gameplay of Mahjong. We know it takes a long time. You're shuffling tiles, you're building out all those walls, you're then having to do a formal dealing process with rolling dice and either self-picking 4 tiles at a time or all around the table, or one dealer dealing out 4 tiles at a time all the way around the table. It takes time. Then you get into the Charleston and finally the courtesy pass. And at that point, I find when I'm teaching men especially, they're checked out. They still haven't gotten to the actual game and they're already kind of over it and all the process that goes along with it. This will allow you to teach your husband or your partner how to play Mahjong and how the game really works in a way where they're getting very quickly acquainted with the card and very quickly acquainted with the strategy on the tiles on their rack. And then at a later date, once you've played a bunch of games of Siamese together, you can introduce him to that 4-player style where he then learns how to build the walls, how to go through the deal, how to do the Charleston, and then finally gets back into that gameplay that he's already feeling comfortable with because you guys have played so many Siamese games. If playing 2 racks at a time feels really daunting for you, you can absolutely start playing 2-player Mahjong with just a single rack until you start to feel more comfortable. I will say that having the 2 racks, I think, is actually easier for that reason that you can switch tiles back and forth between the 2 racks and all of a sudden the hands come together that much quicker. But if it just feels overwhelming or it feels like something that's gonna be too much for you, start with a single rack, start with a single hand, get a handful of games under your belt, and then add that second rack and play 2 hands at a time in 2-player Mahjong. Now that Valentine's Day is tomorrow, I thought this was the perfect opportunity to teach you guys how to play Siamese and to encourage you to get your spouse or your partner or your best friend involved in playing Siamese Mahjong with you, because it's a great way to be together. It goes faster than a 4-player game. It's a great way to get extra practice in, and coming up on those 2025 cards in April, you'll learn that card so much faster. So happy Valentine's Day and happy Mahjing.